YNR spoilers reveal Tracy Abbott stands in front of the mirror in her room at the Abbott household, looking at her reflection. Her eyes are red from crying all night, but today, she decides to face everything that happened. Tracy knows that after all the emotional turmoil she's been through, she needs some time to rest, to heal the wounds that Martin has caused. She returns to the decision she's been thinking about for a long time, leaving Genoa City. She walks down the stairs, where she and Martin used to share sweet moments. But now, everything is different. A feeling of regret wells up inside her. Tracy wants to distance herself from those painful memories, but she can't deny that they're still too fresh in her mind. When Tracy reaches the living room, Phyllis and Sharon are already there. Phyllis, always curious and impatient, can't help but urge her. She asked in a doubtful tone, "Tracy, when did you realize that Alan Laurent was actually Martin?" Tracy let out a soft sigh, her hands clenching. She felt Phyllis's pressure, but first of all, she knew that she couldn't let this conversation continue in that direction. Sharon, always the one who could control her emotions and stay calm, looked at Phyllis and said gently, "Phyllis, we can't blame Tracy. She did everything she could, and no one can change the past." Tracy felt Sharon's words as a comforting medicine. She gently sat down on the opposite chair, her eyes misting as she thought of the sweet moments with Alan, the things she once thought were real. But everything collapsed when she discovered that the man was not Alan, but Martin Laurent. A con man, someone who took advantage of her feelings. But when she thought about what Martin had done for her in the best moments of her life, she couldn't deny that he had given her feelings she'd never felt before. The afternoon walks they'd spent together, the late-night conversations she'd never forgotten. Tracy couldn't deny that Martin's love for her, even if it was fake, had made her feel loved. "Tracy, I know you're hurting," Sharon continued, "but you can't let this pain control your life. You need to move on." Tracy looked at Sharon, her eyes filled with gratitude. Sharon was the only one who looked at her not with pity, but with understanding and encouragement. I just want to forget it all," Tracy said, her voice choking. "I know I have to, but those memories, they're still with me, whether I want them to or not." Phyllis, realizing that she needed to change her approach, softened and said in a softer voice, "You'll be okay, Tracy. I understand the feeling of wanting to run away. But sometimes, facing it all and accepting the truth is the only way to heal." The three women sat there, no longer as adversaries, but as friends sharing their pain and hope. Tracy felt the warmth from Sharon and Phyllis. She didn't know if she could forget Martin, but she knew that she could move on, no matter how thorny the road ahead was. As Tracy stood up, preparing to leave, she felt a calmness in her heart. She wouldn't forget Martin, but she wouldn't let him rule her life anymore. She knew she needed to find herself again, to find the strong, independent Tracy Abbott. Before leaving, Tracy turned to look at Sharon and Phyllis, her true friends at the moment, and took their hands. "Thank you, I don't know what I would do without you." She turned and walked out, full of hope that even though the past had brought her to tragedy, the future still had many opportunities to start over. Tracy decided that she would not let the past haunt her anymore. Before leaving Genoa City, Tracy knew that she needed to do one more thing: say goodbye to Martin. Arriving at the prison, Tracy faced Martin, the man she had loved, even though he was the one who had cheated on her. In Martin's eyes, she saw regret, but also something that could not be explained. Tracy couldn't say much, just looked at him silently and said, "Goodbye, Martin." She turned and walked out of the prison, into a future without Martin, without the wounds, only a new, stronger Tracy, ready to take on the challenges ahead. Diane Jenkins stood on the balcony of the Abbott mansion, the pale light of the afternoon settling over Genoa City. She looked out into the distance, but her mind couldn't get away from the story she had just experienced with Jack. A painful, vague feeling kept her from escaping the memories of the past, of what had happened between her and the Abbott family. Things only got more complicated when she realized that the Alan Laurent she had trusted, the man she had loved, was actually Martin Laurent, a notorious con man. When Diane returned to the living room, Jack Abbott was sitting there, looking worried as she entered. He could sense the change in her. The tension, the hurt she was feeling. Diane didn't want to hide it anymore. She couldn't continue to live in the mess Martin had created, and now the truth was like a bucket of cold water poured over her. She couldn't deny the feeling of betrayal. "Diane, you know I'm on your side," Jack began, his eyes unmistakably worried. "I just want to protect you." But Diane couldn't stand the silence between them any longer. She stepped forward, stood facing Jack, and said in an angry voice, "You don't understand, Jack. All I need is the truth. Why don't you believe me? Alan, he's Martin. How can you believe these lies?" Jack, still trying to keep his composure, nodded. "I just want to protect you, Diane. You're already hurt. I don't want you to suffer anymore. But I can't accept that the person you love is a liar. I need time to figure things out." Diane couldn't contain her emotions. Tears rolled down her cheeks, each one like the shards of a shattered dream. She felt like an outsider in the Abbott family, part of a world she had never really belonged to. People had always looked at her with suspicion, always suspected she was the one who had brought trouble to the family. And now the truth about Martin had made her feel even more excluded than ever. "You don't understand, Jack. I've always tried to be a part of this family, but I've never felt like one," Diane said through sobs. "I've always tried to prove that I could be someone worthy of the Abbott family, but every time I did, something made me feel like I didn't belong." Jack, despite his intentions to protect Diane, now realized that his efforts were only putting her in a more difficult situation. He stepped closer, put his hand on her shoulder, and said softly, "I'm sorry, Diane. I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to protect you. I know you've been through a lot, but I still can't quite believe it." Diane shook her head, trying to wipe away her tears. She couldn't understand why Jack couldn't believe her. After everything that had happened, she had done everything to be accepted, but all she had received in return was doubt, alienation from the people she loved most. "I feel left out," Diane continued, her voice trailing off, as if all her emotions were being bottled up. "I loved you, Jack. I wanted to do everything to make you and this family accept me, but I always felt like an outsider. No one really saw me." Jack stood silently for a moment, listening to Diane's every word. He could hear the pain in her voice, and he knew he had been wrong. He couldn't continue to protect her by denying the truth, but he also couldn't let her feel alone in this situation. "You're not an outsider," Jack said softly, his eyes full of sincerity. "I'm sorry I didn't see your pain. I understand that you're going through a huge internal battle, and I won't leave you alone in this battle." Diane looked at Jack, sensing the change in his voice and eyes. She felt a little warm inside. Yes, they might not understand each other completely, but at least for this moment, Jack was actually listening to her. It might not be the answer she expected, but at least it was an acknowledgement that she wasn't an outsider. "I'm going to leave for a while," Diane said, her voice softer. "I need time to think and find myself. I can't stay and continue living these lies. Thank you for what you've done, but I need to do this for myself." Jack didn't stop her. He understood that Diane needed time, and he could only hope that she would find the peace she deserved. The worry was still there, but at least now, he had a better understanding of Diane and the emotions she was going through. Diane left the room, her eyes filled with determination. Whatever the future held, she had decided that she would no longer let lies and doubts rule her life. She would find herself again, no matter how difficult the road ahead. In the cozy room of the Abbott mansion, the soft light of the lamp illuminated every corner of the wall, but in Diane Jenkins' heart, everything was dark and full of chaos. She sat alone on the sofa, her tired eyes looking far away, seemingly thinking about everything that had happened. The waves of fire of the past, the times she trusted the man Alan Laurent she loved, now disappeared into thin air when the truth was revealed. The man she thought was Alan turned out to be Martin Laurent, a disgusting fraud. What Diane had done to become a part of the Abbott family seemed never enough, because in their eyes, she was forever an outsider. Diane felt an emptiness in her heart when she thought that Jack still could not fully trust her, even though she had tried her best to explain everything. Even in the sweetest moments of family life, she still could not find a firm place in Jack's heart. Her efforts not only left her feeling lost, but also pushed her into a more difficult situation, where she was surrounded by suspicion and alienation. A moment later, Jack entered the room, his eyes soft as he looked at Diane, as if he could sense the pain she was feeling. Neither of them said anything for a moment, simply sitting quietly together, seemingly letting the silence fill the gaps left by words. "Jack, I don't want to upset you anymore," Diane began, her voice a little choked. "You need to focus on Tracy and all the other family troubles. The things I said, I want you to forget." Jack looked at Diane, his expression sad, but also full of sympathy. "Diane, you don't have to say that. I'm glad you shared with me, even though it was difficult. I can't forget what you said, but I won't let it ruin everything we can do together. I'll always be there for you." Diane nodded silently, though she felt a little sad inside. She knew that Jack wanted to help her, but things were too complicated. The feeling of betrayal and lack of trust from the Abbott family made it impossible for her to feel completely safe with him. A moment later, Tracy Abbott appeared, her face full of worry and fatigue, as if the past months had taken all her strength. When her eyes met Diane's, a feeling of guilt rose in her heart, because she knew that she had been avoiding Diane all this time. Tracy felt that she had done wrong for not realizing that Diane needed support during her most difficult time. "Tracy, you don't have to apologize," Diane said, her voice soft but tired. "You just did the best you could. He won't take it easy on you." Tracy looked at Diane, her eyes filled with regret and worry. "I didn't do enough," Tracy sighed. "You deserve the support of the Abbott family, and I just didn't realize how much worse you were dealing with." "It's okay, Tracy," Diane replied, her voice softer. "We all have our weak moments. But I think it's important that we stand up for ourselves." Tracy stepped closer to Diane, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I won't let this get to us. But I've made my decision." Diane looked at Tracy, waiting for her to continue. "What decision?" she asked. Tracy looked at Jack, then back at Diane, her eyes filled with determination. "I'm leaving. For a while, at least. I need some space to start over, to find myself." Diane felt a pang of sadness, but said nothing. Tracy had made her decision, and she knew it was for the best. "Where are you going?" Diane asked. "I'm going to New York, and I'm going to work on my new book with Ashley," Tracy said, smiling softly. "But I swear I'll be back, and I'll see the renovation of the Abbott mansion." Jack looked at Tracy with understanding and encouragement. "I'm always there for you, Tracy. And Diane will be there for us." Tracy smiled softly, but her eyes still held a lingering worry. "I trust you, Jack. I know that this family will always be there for me, wherever I am." Diane stood up, her eyes red with unshed tears. "I'll be with you, Tracy. We'll get through this together." A soft silence filled the room as Tracy walked out, preparing for her trip to New York. Diane stood there, silently watching Tracy, wondering if she would ever find peace in the Abbott household again. Meanwhile, Jack turned back to Diane, still sensing the worry in her eyes. "Diane, I won't leave you alone," Jack said, but Diane didn't answer right away. She just smiled softly, looking out the window, where the sunlight was beginning to peek through. She knows in her heart that, no matter how much pain she feels, she has to get up. She won't let the past rule her life. And no matter how many challenges lie ahead, she will find a way to move forward. Subscribe to YNR to stay up to date with the latest news on our channel.